This is the Red Podcast.
Just something like why burnout mode is bad.
Okay.
And like maybe some signs that you are in burnout mode.
Okay. Episode number 13.
Correct.
All right. This is episode number 13. Are you stressed, overworked, can't keep up? It may be burnout. I've been there. Laurel has been there. And on this episode, we're going to talk about burnout and the solution for it, specific things you can do to keep on keeping on. That's going to the outtake reel. All right.
Okay. I was like, are we done with that? I like that, to keep on keeping on.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
So Laurel and I work from home most of the time, and that is also where we record the Red Podcast.
It's very mysterious.
It's very mysterious. We're actually in separate rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I'm right above her. She likes me on top.
I was thinking it, and you said it. There we go. There it is.
We just stepped right over that line. We've been so good. It's episode
so good.
13.
Oh.
So out the window, we can see the front street, the street that we live on. And we live in an urban neighborhood. A lot of people would consider it downtown Nashville. It's very close. Should we say the name of our neighborhood for people who are familiar with Nashville?
Go for it.
It's called 12 South. Very hip. Very hip.
It's a very cool neighborhood.
And there is this kid that comes by almost every day. And we're kind of on a hill, I guess, right? Not a real hill, but it's a hill for like an urban hill. It's not like San Francisco, but
No.
we have a lot of runners on the hill. They like to get their exercise in.
They look in pain by the time they get to the top. It's a long kind of shallow
Long,
hill.
gradual hill,
Yes.
maybe 20, 25 degrees.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a kid, and every day at rush hour, when all the commuters from downtown are going out to the suburbs, and we're in between, he gets his skateboard, and he's defying death.
He just
in
goes
a
up
big
and
way.
down the hill.
Up and down the hill. Doesn't seem to be phased at all. And he's out there now.
I'm
so.
afraid we're going to have to like watch him and call 911 or something.
If Laurel screams through this episode, you will know why.
I know cars are going around him, and he's also squatting down on the skateboard,
He's
so
getting
he's
very
even harder to
aerodynamic.
see. Fortunately,
Yeah.
he has a helmet on.
He's got a huge, it looks like a robin's egg.
It does.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it needs
right
to
on top
have
of
like
his head.
flashing something.
Totally. He needs like a full-on bodysuit. Like he needs to look like the Michelin Man out there.
I know. Or remember when we did that, David, we did that game of sumo wrestling where we got in those like huge sumo blow-up suits?
Yeah.
And I totally whooped your ass. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that part.
Well, I remember that part. That's what that kid needs to be in, to do this in rush hour traffic where cars are parked on both sides of the street, and he's just going down, and
He doesn't care.
it's scary.
No,
he needs
no,
a sumo suit. I'm telling you.
Well, here's what got me thinking. I said, this would actually be a good topic for this podcast. This kid inspired me because you and I also spend a lot of time outside. We get outside every day. You were out hiking this morning at, I guess, like an urban park, we'll call it.
Sure.
Kind of like a Central Park kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
I was out today, and it's something that we do in order to prevent burnout. I thought it would be interesting to look into that a little bit more in depth because it happens to a lot of people. It's happened to us at various levels during our career and will likely happen again, but this is what we kind of do to offset burnout.
And burnout is killer, man. I mean, I have worked with many a client who, and I work with people who want to escape their day jobs and grow a business of their dreams. And, do what they want to do with their lives. And so a lot of times when you get started on your new business, you're so excited about it and you put all this energy and time into it and you're working all the time. And then along comes burnout. You just kind of work yourself into a rut, and it can slow you down for sometimes weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years. But when you get into that burnout state, you're not moving any faster towards your long-term goals. So I do think it's an important topic to talk about today.
It's detrimental. I think I spend a lot of time in the gym to prevent burnout, but you see guys in the gym and they're working those muscles, and there's a fine line between working your muscles to where you're going to be in better shape and working them so much that you tear something or you just ruin them and you have to take time off. It's not unlike that.
Yes. I mean, that's the same with work. And you can be burnout in multiple things that aren't business related, but we work in business. This podcast is about business. So we're going to talk about the business kind of burnout and what to do about it. But I think what we'll probably talk about today applies to any kind of burnout that you're going through.
This podcast, actually how I got not into podcasting because my background is actually in broadcast radio, but how I got into radio was because of burnout.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't heard this one.
Well, you know that I did a huge conference. I owned a conference in Nashville for several years. It was the second largest music business conference in the country.
Wow.
2,500 daytime attendees. We showcased as many as 400 acts.
That's a lot of work.
You can imagine the work. It was 51 weeks of work. We would have the event for a year. It was kind of like a music festival is probably the best way to describe it, but it had daytime events as well. And that's what the 2,500 people were doing. Mm-hmm. A&R guys, label heads, that kind of thing. So it was a lot of work. And when I was in college, I had done radio, and I did radio post-college. And I also had started my career in radio promotion, actually, my music business career. So I knew a little something about radio, and I was like, well, I'd like to still reach out to all those people that I'm reaching out to during this event. I wanted to be an ambassador for Nashville because I'm really proud of our city. I think we've got a fantastic city, and I wanted to reach the message of Nashville out to other people. So rather than having them all come here, I wanted to go out to them. And I said, well, I'm going to get back into radio, and that's how I did it.
Where did the burnout come into play?
Well, the burnout came from too much work.
Like, explain that a little more.
Oh, okay. Oh, you want to go deep into it?
Well, I wanted to know. You just said you ran a big conference, but you didn't say where the burnout came in.
Okay. I thought that was self-explanatory.
You just assumed that with this huge conference that anyone would get overworked and burn out.
Well, you can imagine. Well, just imagine this for a second. For one, we talked on the last podcast, episode number 12, about your book, for example, right? And you're writing a book, and you don't see any of the results of it till the book actually comes out. Mm-hmm. And that's what this music conference was like to me. We would work for 51 weeks out of the year. We had to schedule 350 to 400 acts to play, and that's not that easy. You've got to arrange for travel accommodations, visas if they're overseas. You've got to get their setup, like the technical specs, get the stage diagrams, make sure you're able to.
So there's a lot of work.
I mean, it's insane. We had employees, and we had a staff of volunteers during the event. We had about 250 people. So I'm at the top of that. I'm responsible for all the employees' payroll. I'm responsible for just a lot of stuff like that. You've got people over 20 or 22 clubs. That was about the average that we would use for 4 or 5 nights, depending on the year that we did it. And you've got people out there drinking. You want those people to be safe. There's just a lot of things that can go wrong, and there's a lot of moving parts. So I just got sick of it, man. It's too much for one person to handle. Even though I had an incredible staff, just being the guy who had to make the payroll, the guy who had to keep the thing moving forward, it was just not what I wanted to do. The woman who was actually our director, a female, and keep in mind, she was probably about...
The woman was a female? Shocking.
Well, the reason I mentioned she was a female is because she was so stressed out her hair started falling out. That's the amount of stress that we had. It just started falling out, and that wouldn't happen to a 20-something-year-old female normally.
Well, that's what I want to ask you is like, what were some of the symptoms that you experienced with burnout? I mean, were you stressed out? Were you in the fetal position crying on the floor? Like, how did you feel when you reached the point of being just completely overworked?
Well, I don't think that I knew it till I would take a break. I think I was so into it. You know how it is. If you were ever in school, you would study, and get your exams going, and then you would get sick after exams.
Yeah, I always.
It was like one of those kind of things. I was so wrapped up in it. But you're talking about something where you had to be in the office that morning. You have shows that are going on till maybe like 2 a.m. in the morning. And it's just a 24-hour-a-day business. We're on the road all the time trying to get people in and just trying to keep the thing moving. It was just being sick of that and having that be my life. It's impossible to have a good relationship. You're not really taking care of yourself like you want to, and you're doing more or less, work stuff all the time.
Yeah, we're all about working less and making more money.
Yeah. Well, or doing work that we find engaging and fun. It's not that there weren't those fun parts of it, but I remember we were doing this big mail out one time, and it was completely crazy because we're at like the 24-hour post office, and we've got to get these like bulk mails out, and we've got to get the visas out and that kind of stuff, and they've got to go out tomorrow because if our guys don't get them, they're not going to be able to get across the border. And yeah, so
I was waiting for you to share some like midlife crisis, quarter life crisis story. I don't know how old you were, but well, I had a similar experience when I was working in my retail store. It was the same kind of deal. It's like I'd started this store, and it was great. It was really great when I started it, and I love the store just like you love the conference and doing that, but it's just a lot of work. And every day you got to be there, and there's more and more to do, and dealing with employees and a lot of stress. And I can tell you, after a couple of years, I got completely burnt out on it. And for me, even though I agree with your analogy that, until you get out of it, you can't really, it's like being sick. You can't really you don't really notice. But for me, I could tell. I mean, I was starting to get really stressed out all the time. I needed a ton of sleep. I was exhausted. When I'd wake up in the morning, it just felt like a drag to go to my own business. I was like, I've created this business. I've escaped my day job, and it felt like a drag to do it.
Yeah, so you actually had to be there. You had retail hours, or you had to have somebody there.
I had to be there. And well, I had employees, but they're never going to do as good of a job, and I like to control things. So I was there most of the time, and I just found myself like just wearing down, getting exhausted, just to the point where I can't say I didn't care, but I cared, but it was just like, I need a break here. You just feel like you just want to take a vacation forever.
Well, with that said, though, it's like my transition into radio, which was more of something that was planned on what I wanted to do and how I wanted to reach people. Without your experience working with a retail store, you wouldn't have moved on to what you're doing now.
Not at all. And I want to point out, because both of our stories were about burnout with our particular businesses and moving to a different business. But just because you're having burnout doesn't mean you have to totally switch businesses or totally redirect your life. So I want to talk about some ways today that you can get out of that burnout mode, because you don't want to make critical decisions when you're in burnout mode, because then you're going to go along the wrong path.
Yeah, that's like making a decision based out of desperation. That's never good. And I think we started out with one of those things, talking about what you did this morning. You took off to the trails this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Took a hike.
Take a hike. Yeah, exactly. That's something for me and for you too, is getting the exercise. I mean, that is critical when it comes to being the best you can be, doing the best you can do, and recharging your batteries, I think.
I think it's because as entrepreneurs, I know you and I both have a lot of energy, and I really believe in energy management. I think we need to do something positive with that energy in order to keep moving forward. One of those things that we can do to kind of burn it off is exercise. Some people do it, or burn energy off via alcohol. Some people do it via food and some other things that are not maybe as healthy as as exercise would be. You're going to have to deal with your energy and your anxiety somehow. And that's the way that you and I choose to do it. And it's worked out real well. And
I can tell with you, David, if you're kind of ever in a funk one day, I'm like, go to the gym. Like, go on a walk, or let's walk around the neighborhood. The point
where I have to do it early.
True.
I have to do it early in the day to get that going, because right